Hi, welcome to another episode of Zero10 Podcast. Dr. Josie is here, of course. And then today we're visiting with Mikayla Reis. Mikayla is an attorney here in the Bismarck Mandan area and a friend. And so we're excited to have you here today, Mikayla. We've tried touching base before, and it's tough when, we all have schedules and stuff, but so we're happy to have you here today. Um, how's your Friday?
Pretty good so far. Actually,
Yeah.
speaking of that, I had a client meeting today that just really revived my desire and my intention for this job. God calls us to whatever we need to do, and I just had a reiteration of that this morning or this afternoon. So thank you for bearing with me and meeting a little later than we originally anticipated.
No, that's awesome. Do you want to touch on that or no? Just move past it.
Generally speaking, I just since I what this we'll get into our theme. So better late than never is my theme that I want to discuss today. Not only is it how I tend to, unless it's court or a client meeting, how I tend to appear to things, whether it be a party or church. I'm better late than never, right? Always. And so on the macro and the micro view. So since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew that I have curly brown hair naturally. And so I remember the O.J. Simpson trial. I think I was in second grade. And I remember seeing Marcia Clark representing the prosecution in the O.J. Simpson trial. And I thought, wow, it was televised, right? I remember it was like a little analog TV that we watched it on. And I thought, wow, that could be a cool job. Really, I liked Marcia Clark's hair, but the person I liked the most was Johnny Cochran. As we all
Mhm.
remember, if the glove does not fit, you must acquit,
You
right?
must have, yeah.
And so I remember since that age wanting to be a lawyer and then going through life and really thinking like, why did I want to be a lawyer? Other than I was always a little bit more outspoken. I was shy at one point in my life, believe it or not. I was so shy. I didn't even want to say my own name. I remember in kindergarten, we were supposed to say our names and I didn't even want to say my own name. I've clearly outgrown that issue.
Mhm.
But growing up in the Midwest, where women are expected to be a little more muted, a little more reserved. I knew from a very young age I wasn't that way, right? And so being a lawyer and advocating for other people, being told I was bossy my whole life, and talked a lot, felt like, being a lawyer would be a good fit. Long story as short as I can make one. I went through my whole probably academic career with the idea and the vision of becoming an attorney. I actually volunteered for what's called our teen court program. I don't know if it's still in existence, but it was mainly for dorks like me who wanted to be attorneys or kids who got in trouble smoking cigarettes, using tobacco, truancy. Fargo's office even allowed first-time offenders of alcohol to enter that program and volunteer and serve in a capacity of a lawyer, a bailiff, I believe, and so either prosecution, defense, an attorney, and then the judges were real life lawyers. And I remember going to that, and then we would all serve as jury members too. And I remember loving it, right? And becoming like pretending I was an attorney from seventh through ninth grade and just absolutely loving it. So my college career was geared towards that. I graduated from University of Mary, go Marauders, early with honors with a major in social and behavioral sciences, an emphasis in pre-law, a minor in business, and a minor in political science. I didn't realize until I walked through. So I graduated in December and then walked through in May and didn't realize I graduated with honors until they said, go get your honors cords at this table. I was like, oh, that's great. Right. Well, I was raised Catholic, and one of the girls that I was an altar server with and went to cathedral with worked at the Broken Oar. And I remember her saying, because I was just kind of every job that I had had, I wanted to be a lawyer. And so it was always really academically based or office based. And I really wanted to be a bartender. And I remember the night before graduation, she said, do you want to come work at the Broken Oar? I said, yeah, absolutely. And so I told my parents, oh, and by the way, mom and dad, I know I just graduated early with honors, but I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I want to have a fun job. I don't want to go to law school right away. Like I just want to take a break and have fun. So I took a different kind of bar exam and I bartended for, I think about 2 years, right? And then after the fun kind of wore off of that, I decided, I have this pesky college degree. I should probably do something with it. It was right around the 2008 like stock market crash. And so I ended up going to work for a local insurance and investment firm for about 6 years. And I really enjoyed that work, mainly because I felt like I was helping people. And back in the Marcia Clark, second through ninth grade, right, knowing I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to help people, right? And so eventually I decided I need to get into a career where I can actually do something with my education and help people. And so for a while, I found reward and benefit in helping people with life insurance, solutions and different things as far as that goes. Um, that exposed me to sales. And it really was kind of neat because what I thought was just going to be a fun job, the bartending gig, ended up turning into a springboard for me to really get out of my shell, which again wasn't tough, but learning to discuss and talk with people of all walks of life, right? And I found that that pigeon-tailed really well, or dovetailed rather, into a really good career in life insurance and investments. I was licensed in just fixed products and like life insurance products for about, I think, 3 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly. But then eventually I got licensed in investments. So I took a couple hard tests, the Series 6 and 63, and then I was set to, and I took the Series 7, which is a really tough test. And I remember the failure rate was like 60% your first time, right? And so I studied, I had the privilege of sharing, my brother lived in Minneapolis at the time. I don't know what that's about. I don't,
I don't know. You keep getting thumbs up, and now
is that because I
Oh,
moved it? I don't know what I'm doing. That's exciting. It's not even in the
boom.
way I want it, right? Um, I remember studying for that test. It was a really hard test, and I passed it. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I had already kind of, realized, sales is great, but I felt like the vacuum cleaner saleswoman, right? Like I felt like the things I was talking about with people were very important for their job, for their families and the livelihoods of their families, but they kind of treated me like I was a telemarketer, right? And that was okay, but it got old real quick. And so I had done the investment thing and then realized maybe I want to do something different. But really, the pivotal point of my career was when I had the privilege of working with a very high net worth client from my dad's hometown. And meeting that person and working with that person really gave me exposure to opportunities I otherwise probably wouldn't have had. Namely, I was able to work with the Advanced Planning Committee in Dallas, Texas, and they were out of the building, the company that I worked for. And so I was working with these big clients and these big cases and other business clients and stuff too. And I wasn't able to give advice, of course, because I wasn't licensed to give that advice, but I was licensed to discuss the financial products that they needed to help fund some of those concept buy sells, estate planning. And that's when I learned about the gift and estate tax, right? And I learned that people who had been working their butts off their whole lives, especially farmers, and working their whole lives paying income tax on everything they earned. um, Now, if they were worth a certain amount of money, at that time, I think it was only like around 5 million adjusted for inflation. So it was a bigger issue back when I first started in that career, that there were certain that they would owe upwards of 40% of what they were worth over and above that threshold of the lifetime gift and estate tax exemption. And I just thought, I remember feeling that was really unfair. I came from a family that had a background in specifically livestock sales barns. My grandparents owned the livestock sale barns in Napoleon and Jamestown. And I'm really proud to say that because I had the privilege of growing up in a more entrepreneurial minded family. And some of my best memories are with my cousins and the sales ring. And so I remember thinking, that's not fair. And I reached out to I don't know why it keeps doing thumbs up on my phone. Um, I'm not, so that was really unfair for me. And so I had the privilege of working with clients that I probably normally wouldn't have, but because I'd had some personal connections, they trusted me, right? And then everything I was dealing with was run by the advanced planning committee of somebody who specifically was an attorney and a licensed insurance agent. And I remember that was kind of when I started to think, hey, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I decided not to, but what am I going to do, right? Like realistically, am I going to work at this investment firm forever? And then there was a really pivotal moment was I had the privilege again of working with this high net worth client, and I won't get into the details, but there was a very major injustice that occurred. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with working for commission, but I only got paid when I sold. And so these bigger sales like literally would have reshaped my career. I lost out because of some, I'll just say injustice at the very least, some manipulation and some false statements on behalf of older agents that had been there longer. I was 23 at the time, and I was working with a client that was worth double-digit millions, right? And nobody really expected me to be able to close a deal, much less by myself, right? And so I subscribed to that thought myself. And so I brought a couple different agents in on the case, and that meant that I had to give them a cut. And that's fine. because they helped me with it, with some of the procedure. One of the agents, who has now passed away, almost blew the sale for me because he shared information in front of the kids and the dad that he wasn't authorized to close or to disclose. And so that was kind of tricky. But again, my relationship with my client was superior, and I didn't understand that until later. But so I was bullied, frankly, into giving up, I think, 65% of my commission, my first big sale, where I would have stood to take maybe $40,000 home, and I was left with 17. That was the first issue. And then I became aware of the injustice more readily and advocated for myself in that respect, and was able to skew the percentage a bit, right? So I still wasn't taking home what I was qualified, what I should have taken home, and worked hard for, and literally worked with an advanced planning agent down in Texas. And so that was my first real, something's not right here. Something's not right. And I guess that's the testament that I have to say today is trials and tribulations that we face feel really scary and really crappy in the moment. But in hindsight, of course, it's 2020. It takes some time, but we see we're exactly where God intends us to be eventually. And that's kind of the overarching theme. So that was the first issue was, hey, I'm working my butt off and I should have made 3 times what I've made. But I believe in my company. I believe in in being loyal to your firm. And so I stayed. It wasn't until about a year or two after my last sale that my client said to me, hey, who's this person on my paperwork? And I was like, well, that's, they made me write them in. And he's like, I met with them once. I didn't want to work with them. Why are they on my paperwork? Right. And I just remember thinking, this is BS. Right. So in the meantime, had been introduced, because of the privilege of working with these higher net worth clients, had had the privilege of being introduced to Dr. Mark Manaski. He's a neurosurgeon, certified financial planner, and an estate planning attorney. I think he's recently retired or will be retiring at the end of this year, but I just had the absolute honor of working with Dr. Mark Manaski for about 5 years, a couple years while I was in law school. First, initially, while I was in the financial firm, he, of course, encouraged me, like I do to young women and men who express any kind of interest in becoming a lawyer, to go back no matter what your age. And that's exactly what I did. Dr. Mark Winaski went to was obviously a board certified neurosurgeon, and then went back to practice law later in his career as a result of adverse consequences that had happened to him and some injustices that had happened to him. And so I was inspired by him and went back later in life. Also, the guy I was dating at the time, his mom went back later in life as well. And I remember distinctly telling my boyfriend at the time, how am I going to tell your mom that I don't want to go to law school anymore? Right. And by the end of it, I was going back to law school. And she was very instrumental in encouraging me to go back and providing financial resources and a place for us to live with our dogs, or my dogs, to be able to foster that. So again, it's never too late to go back. And so I went back to law school, and it was the best decision I've ever made. I'll tell everybody that, and then some, and whoever will listen. Not only because, of course, the economic opportunities that presented for me, but one thing I was thinking when I was at that investment firm was, why would I keep, because I can't practice law, right? So I can tell them all about the products, but I always had to advise them to go to an attorney. And that was where I decided, hey, maybe estate planning is a reason I could go back to law school. Because before it was always just litigation, just trial stuff, right? And then I kind of just thought, I don't know if I want to do that. And then so when the estate planning route came about a route, I realized, why am I going to farm out, give all this business to these attorneys when I can be like the guy that I'm talking to in the advanced planning committee and do both? So my intention was fully to practice law and still maintain an active insurance practice. I am still technically licensed to sell insurance. I don't, I mean, I can help people if they need it, but I typically farm that out to a local investment firm too. And I have primarily practiced law since I was licensed in 2017. So again, I did the whole thing where you go to the law firm after, well, I worked with Dr. Manaski for I think 2 years licensed, and then 3 years remotely while I was in law school. And I didn't realize how spoiled I was working with Dr. Manaski, because he was not only so brilliant, you could hardly take it. Anybody who meets him is like, how does he do it all? And he's superhuman in my opinion. He's a Christian, and we had that in common. And he was just very humble. You don't meet many people that are surgeons that are that humble. All due respect to my surgeon clients. Um, my mom, just a little background too, I just had a particular affinity for working with a physician because My mom's been a nurse for 50 years, and I just think that is God's work too. I mean, God bless all of our nurses and healthcare workers, especially nowadays. I just didn't have the stomach for it, and I knew that. And I like to dress up, so I knew that was going to be a problem too, because they wore the same thing every day. Couldn't have fancy nails, couldn't, you had to be cognizant of your dress code, and I didn't want that. So God bless her. And then another kind of endeavor that happened in my life that I feel helped form me was my dad was really sick. So as I was applying to law school, my dad was in end stage renal failure. And my mom, being a nurse, knew more about it and knew kind of how scary that was. And at the time, my aunt, his sister, was dying of ovarian cancer. We found out later what it was. And I just remember being faced with, we had a family member step up and say, I'm going to donate. It's going to be great. Okay, that's great. I'm studying for the LSAT and my mom, the law school admissions test, the test you take to get into law school. And my mom called me crying and so and so is not going to donate anymore. And I'm just so scared. And I just remember thinking, do I want to be a person of action or do I want to be a person of words? We all know I'm a person of words, right?
Mhm.
Like you can't shut me up. Clearly, you haven't said two words in this 20 minutes we've been talking, right? But do I want to be a person of action? And more importantly, how am I going to feel? What impact will it have on me in, God forbid, how many years if I watch my dad die? And I knew there was something I could do about it, and I didn't. Um, and it became very clear to me that was what I was being called to do. And so, a live donor, it was my understanding that a live donor was a much better alternative than a dialysis. Than dialysis, of course, dialysis would be for my dad, but also even just a cadaver kidney. For other reasons, right? Like the waiting list on the organ transplantation list, like it's a long time. There were no guarantees, and I'm a woman of action, I've learned, and I need to take matters into my own hands. And so that's what I did. I kept it secret for a while and made sure the testing went through because I didn't want another, disappointment. And so right before what would be my first year of law school, and at the
Mhm.
firm that I was, I realized I was so grateful for the time flexibility, the freedom that I had because I was able to still try to maintain a practice, a financial practice, but then also do the testing and the different things necessary. And everybody was very supportive, so that was great. So then I became, I was a kidney donor. Everything, God willing, went great. My dad is still kicking. He's still his stubborn German self, God willing. And we're, I think, 12 years out now. And it was kind of crazy because my dad and I are very similarly tempered. And so I know thankfully, I have my mom in me, so I'm sweeter. He's gonna love that. But the reason that it was so impactful for me was because he was real mellow. Like his personality was different. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is real, and I felt it's time to do something about it. And so all that to say, we went through with the kidney transplant. It went really well. God is good. And then he started getting stubborn again. And I was like, oh, okay, he's back to normal. And I'm pleased to say he's back to his stubborn self 12 years later. So God willing, we have many more years left with him. But it was also that experience that taught me, hey, if not now, when? Right? Like I didn't anticipate dad. He was 58. I didn't anticipate him being sick like that. And I just thought, I always wanted to be a lawyer. What's holding me back, right? In conjunction with the idea of, kind of being screwed over. And I felt like my loyalty wasn't being recognized or appreciated. And so I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. And obviously, with Dr. Manaski's encouragement, and then the gentleman I was dating at the time, his mom's encouragement, who I am still friends with her to this day. She is just an amazing, amazing woman. Um, it gave me the freedom and the ability to go back to law school. And again, I'm not the typical quiet, tell me what to do. I like to be bossed around. I'm not the typical person. And so going to law school not only economically changed my standing, but it also taught me that there are other women like me, right? And like going out of my way to get out of my comfort zone, being with a group of people, men and women, who were out of their comfort zones. It was just one of the most gratifying experiences I've ever had. And I just would encourage anybody, whatever that practice is, whatever that curriculum is, if you're thinking, hey, I have kids, I don't want to do it, wait till they're a little older, right? Like if I'm scared. What's scarier? Staying where you are or taking that risk and encouraging yourself to go. I'll just forever be a proponent of that. So law school was great. I moved back to Bismarck. I didn't mind Grand Forks as much as I thought I would, so I just want to say that out loud. But came back from Grand Forks and studied for the bar exam, took that and finally passed it in the spring of 2017. I took it early and my dog was dying. And this is again, trajectory, right? Like I'm not afraid to admit I failed the bar exam the first time I took it by like 7 points. You need like 260 or 270, and I missed it by 7 points. I remember my childhood dog, Duke, was dying on the floor in the garage for the last probably 2 weeks of my prep to take the test in February. I remember studying the black letter law of the bar exam, lying on the floor with my dog as he was dying, right? And like he is just the best. He waited until the 2-day test was over and then he passed, right? Um, but getting through that adversity and feeling like a shame, feeling shame because I failed it, right? I always joke, and it's true. I said the only thing I've ever failed was a pregnancy test, and that was on purpose, right? So it was especially shameful for me to fail that test. But it was so great because the rumor mill at school had already gone around, and I was probably what you'd self-classify as what we call a gunner. So when you're in law school, your exams are based on your whole like depending on the class. Your grade in law school is based on one test at the end of the semester. But every single day up until then, every class period up until then, you're expected to read several cases, like 10 to 20 to 30 pages of really dense case material. And then your teacher quizzes you on it and they call you out. And so to avoid being called out, I would volunteer the answer, and usually the teachers left you alone. And so I'm sure people thought, oh, that's how they remembered me, right? And my grades were pretty decent. I was just shy of graduating with honors in law school. Again, I was not super happy about that, but I was just everybody's smart. When you get to law school or any kind of grad school, everybody's used to being good, you know? And so I was okay to fall in the middle or towards the top of the middle of the pack on that one because I had brilliant classmates. I will also give a shout out to UND Law. I really wanted to go in the mountains. I really wanted to go to law school in the mountains, and actually first applied to Missoula, to Montana State, and I was accepted. And then that was when we realized my dad was sick, and I didn't want to pay double the tuition. It didn't make sense for the same tier law school to pay double the tuition. So I stayed, and I thought if I really want to go into the mountains, I can go to school cheap and then transfer. Well, I obviously never ended up leaving, but that's another story. So I passed the bar exam. I failed the bar exam the first time, but the rumor mill at school had already been going around. Everybody said, Mikayla failed. I was one of only a few people that took it because we graduated early and we took it right away in the fall or the winter. It's given twice a year, February and July. And so I had missed it then, but the rumor mill had already said, Mikayla failed, but her dog was dying. I was so grateful. It's like, thanks, guys. Thanks for giving me the credit on that, right? And so fast forward to I ended the relationship I was in for 6 years with that guy. And so that was another burden, right, of trying to study when I had that, emotional stuff and the failing. And then my dad's sick this whole time. Or excuse me, he was better at this point. He was better at this point, but just the fear of what that looks like, right? And had lost my dog, blah, 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 right? And so I remember just thinking, I'm going to study not as hard. And that was what was messed up about it. Like I didn't study as hard. I studied consistently, but I didn't study as hard as I did the first time. And I think it was just a testament to my body being able to relax, my mind being able to relax, excuse me, and focusing on Barbary multiple choice questions, right? And so I did the multiple choice questions over and over and over because that was one of my weakest areas. So when you fail the bar exam, you get your exam answers back. And this is my humble brag alert because I got to redeem myself. See, my ego still needs to redeem myself for failing it that first time. And I remember going back to the lady, one of our professors at the school, who what taught a bar prep course at UND Law. And I remember getting my exam answers and saying, "Hey, can you go through with me what I did wrong so that I can make damn sure I pass it this time?" And she read them and she said, "Actually, Mikayla," she's like, "it's your multiple choice that took you down." She's like, "Your exam answers are actually exemplary. Like your writing is exemplary. Can I show this to my law school class to teach them what an example, like a model example would be?" And I said, "Absolutely, you can. Absolutely, you can show them that I did a good job, right? And that it was just a multiple choice that took me out." And so that's what I did. I focused my studies the next time on what I did wrong, and that was just answering the practice questions, the multiple choice. So I failed, or excuse me, I passed then. I took it with my class, so I technically took it on time. Again, the ego's rearing up here. I took it on time with my classmates and passed it that time. Right? So I got licensed. I was sworn in on September 22nd of 2017. Worked for Dr. Manaski. We still did, we worked for what was called MD Wealth Protector, where we did estate planning for kind of high net worth and asset and estate planning for asset protection planning with a focus, or excuse me, estate planning with a focus on asset protection for physicians, surgeons, other high net worth individuals, and basically anybody who I had as an insurance or investment client because I wanted them to be taken care of. Um, so we did that for a couple years, licensed, and then Dr. Manaski wanted to focus more on his neurosurgery and um, he was going back and forth and was contemplating moving down south. And so we decided it was a better move for me to move on. And so I will always forever be grateful to Dr. Manaski and the wisdom that he imparted on me, the life lessons, sharing his struggles with me about, what led him to law school really helped encourage me, especially during that time between failing the bar exam and then passing it. And not to mention just his example as a professional, a Christian professional specifically. He was just so humble. And if somebody that smart could treat people that well, I thought, what's my excuse? Right. And so worked with him, forever grateful. And then I worked for another local law firm in town. I had a couple different gigs. It took me a little while to find my fit. I found a fit at a local law firm in town. I'm forever grateful to those gentlemen as well. I was the third female in 110 or 15 years, however long that firm was open, to serve as an attorney. And that was a real privilege and an honor for me too. And spent a couple years there, kind of cutting my teeth. And that was the distinction. That's what led me to trial practice, right? So like this whole time I'd been licensed as an attorney, but I'd only really done estate planning or what we call transactional work. So it's not before a court, you don't have the deadlines, you're not dealing with the judge, you're not dealing with as much stress, right? As a schedule like that could impart, and just the adversarial nature of our judicial system. But my old boyfriend's mom, the one that I'm still friends with, the one who's a lawyer, she just always said to me, Mikayla, that's great that you are an attorney. I'm so proud of you, but you belong in a courtroom. And I just never really forgot that. And I just remember back to my, seeing Marsha Clark in action, right? I thought, that would be really cool. And we all see like Law and Order, right? And we always want to be the lawyers like Law and Order. I actually competed in a trial competition, a national trial competition, my first year of law school with my partner, who's just an incredible girl too. And she's a prosecutor, I think, down in Colorado now, in like a big high stakes job. And I credit her, but we won outstanding prosecution in the whole competition. So I think our team placed fourth or fifth, but she and I won outstanding prosecution, which technically it was a civil case, so it should have been outstanding plaintiff's attorney, but whatever, didn't sound as cool. And I remember that judge said at the end of our mock trial, he said, one of you watches too much Law and Order. And he looked and he said to me, it was you. And I said, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Your Honor. But we won. We won the award and it was really cool. And that was really encouraging. So I had some trial practice is the point I'm trying to make, is I had some experience in like a mock trial situation, right? But then very soon on in my legal education, I knew I wanted to work with Dr. Manaski. I knew I wanted to stay kind of in that vein of the financial planning, the estate planning realm. And so that was where my practice was focused. So then after that, when Dr. Manaski and I decided to part ways, I had a couple different trial gigs. Again, it took me a while to find my fit. And because I'd been used to um, working on my own with the firm that I was affiliated previously, I knew that I was used to the time freedom, and the bigger risk for me was making somebody else a lot of money, right? And more importantly, being told how to run my practice, which clients I could and could not take, how I should do things, right? And whether I technically maybe agreed with the way they were doing it or not from a legal standpoint, of course, always following the law, but from a philosophical or a moral standpoint. And I just decided I wanted to take that leap on my own. And eventually I had a couple transitions there where I worked for um, another firm, and then that didn't work out. And then I came home upset from when that didn't work out. And my dad said, okay, enough now. This whole time he's like, when are you going to go out on your own? And I said, well, Dad, I have to know what I'm doing first. Like you can't just go become a trial attorney with no freaking experience. And so having had the privilege of working with the longstanding law firm that I'm forever grateful, for their mentorship and their camaraderie and entrepreneur and mentorship specifically. I felt like I had the confidence to go out on my own. And I was really blessed to find within a very short turnaround. I started my PLLC in 2019 when Dr. Manaski and I parted ways. I went on my own briefly, and then I was approached by a headhunter who got me to a different firm, and I did a little bit of work there. It wasn't the right fit professionally. And so I had already had my PLLC set, my malpractice insurance I had already had, and a relationship with a carrier. And then I had my trust account. For lawyers have to have what's called a trust account that you put all your retainers into first, and you only pay yourself as you go, right? So I had already had that kind of infrastructure put in place. And so even though I was a 1099 and working for somebody else, I had the ability to make a really quick turnaround. And it was just the timing, right? I found the space that I rent now within 2 days. I mean, Thursday was the day I went home. By that Saturday morning, I had, oh, was it? Yay, right? It's not exactly when I wanted to do it,
Yes,
it doesn't.
It was perfect timing.
Right? So I'd found the space, and I get to rent space from a senior attorney who I don't have to answer to. He's the best, but I get all of the benefits of working in a firm where, I have somebody senior if I need to ask questions or just that day to day, right? Like I'm a very social person. And so I learned very quickly in one of the firms that I worked at before, when I wasn't client interfacing and I only dealt with one person who frankly was pretty miserable at their job, that I didn't want to end up like that, right? And so it's a very stressful gig. I do estate planning, which is actually the easier part of my job, and then I do a lot of family law. So I practice primarily in the family law arena, doing adoptions, custody, which is called parenting time. It's formerly known as custody, and then divorce, post-judgment modifications. So if people have a judgment already in their divorce and they want to change something specifically, more often than not with the children, relating to the children, I help with that. That's what today's meeting was about. And just advocating for people, right? Like it's just been a real privilege and a real honor to do as I had always hoped, help people during the worst parts of their life, step in and help advocate for them. And so again, the whole point is better late than never, right? I went back to law school at 28. I just turned 40. Don't tell anyone. Thanks to Beauty Renew. I do not look 40, I think. And so it's just a testament to those trials and tribulations, right? Like we think we know what we want our lives to look like. God has a different plan, right? And no matter what, if we stay focused and we stay close to Him, we stay true to ourselves, but mostly to Him, He will lead our way right there. See, how is this doing this? I don't even know how it's doing it. He will take us where we need to be. I was very upset because I was so proud to work for that law firm that I worked for. And I was, kind of not poached, but I had been expressing some frustration with just interpersonal office dynamics that I felt were unnecessary and were hindering me from doing a really good job for my clients. And more importantly, taken away from my bottom line. If I'm bringing the clients in and I'm doing the work, why am I giving half of it to somebody who's not helping me? That's really what it came down to. It didn't make economic sense anymore. Um, the experience that I gained was invaluable, between that firm and just other attorneys in my community. That was one of the coolest parts about going out on my own, truly on my own, was just the support I received from other attorneys. Still to this day, I'm getting referrals from other attorneys that I look up to, firms that I have a ton of respect for, multiple firms in town specifically that are giving people my name. It's just such an honor and such a privilege. And um, had I not had the courage to kind of go out on my own and really believe in myself and advocate for myself, first in that investment firm when I felt like there was injustice happening there, and then again, finding my way through the law firm jobs and to myself, to being on my own. Um, it was just really, it was not easy, but that's my encouragement for people is it's not always going to be easy, and you just have to pray and you have to believe in yourself. And just to brag a little bit more, I actually just got Rising Star Super Lawyer for the second year in a row. And that's again, primarily when I spoke with the representatives of the company, a lot of that was because I went out on my own, right? That was one of the big factors that they looked at. And just a quick shout out to Lacey's Custom Jewelry.
Lady.
I bought myself a knockout diamond ring as a
Wow.
result, right? And she just does the best work. all of my promo materials, let me find, I thought I just gave my last one away. All of my promotional materials are for her through her business because she bought Bubble Island bath products. And so I've got custom body butters and custom lip butters. It's a little unconventional way to market a lawyer, but if anybody knows me, they know that's right up my alley, right? So um networking and just building those connections and really relying on other people and being vulnerable and humble enough to admit when you don't know it all. That's one of the hardest lessons I've learned, because we want our instinct is to protect and to feel like we know it all, right? And in this gig, it's in being a lawyer, it's even easier to fall into that trap because we want to be confident, we want to know what we're doing. But one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is being humble enough to admit when you don't know and reaching out to other professionals, other attorneys, other CPAs, people who are more qualified than I am to help me with some of those answers, has been one of the most beneficial things that I've been able to kind of uncover about myself. And so that's what I hope to do. I'll never pretend I know it all. I'm not perfect. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I will make dang sure that my clients are heard and that their perspective is heard and that their opinion is, vocalized, and I'm not afraid to tell you what you need to hear too, based on my experience. But I'm the first to stand corrected, right? The judge is the only one that can make those decisions. And so clearly being in litigation has enlivened has what? It has brought out my true personality, and I feel like it's a really great way for me to express the talents that God has given me. My ability to hopefully advocate for my clients and empathize with my clients and really advocate for them, but also get paid for this smart mouth. Everybody says, you're such a smart ass, you're such a smart ass. Well, sometimes we just have to lean into that.
Yeah, that's
Speaking
good.
of leaning into, my thought process when you're talking about giving away branded items to promote yourself marketing, you should have Lacey create a red lip color for you and hand those out.
Right.
Call it the Mikayla or something like that.
Speaking of that, no, that's hilarious because
The something, yeah.
I've had several friends of mine reach out to me and their kids, like, that's how they recognize me. Well, she has red lips.
Yeah.
Or like people, so speaking of shout outs to fellow awesome professionals in the community, I've posted this all over my Facebook publicly. Kenzie Reynolds at the Permanent Makeup Place, I think is what she calls her business, actually
Yeah.
tattooed my lip color on and my eyebrows. So again, I'm not ashamed to admit, girl, I'm going down kicking and screaming with this whole aging thing. I have my Aunt Jessica. She is one of the most beautiful and courageous women I know, and on my dad's side, and she has really taught me that we can still age with grace, right? See,
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Thumbs
Uh,
up.
but so I got my permanent makeup done, and you can still, for anybody out there who wants to maybe get permanent makeup, but I hesitated for a while because I thought I couldn't have my signature red lip if I did, or I wanted to do a pink, if I did red. Really, what you can do is just overlay it with makeup and you can still get the effect. It's just you wake up looking like you have makeup on. And for somebody who comes in hot and runs late, right? A lot of the time, that's perfect for me. So,
I remember when I got my eyelashes done, like that was it. Like I just felt like I was done all the time or done
yep.
enough to like just show up for my things. It was a time thing for me, why I loved
Yep.
it so
Oh,
much.
absolutely. And speaking of lashes, I used to pay to get my lashes done with Lindsay Dix at Gratitude. She is excellent. But I just don't have the time to get in every couple weeks. And so I started using Lashify. So if Lashify hears this and wants to sponsor me, I'd be down with that too. That is then the best for me too, is you do it yourself and it lasts 10 days to 2 weeks.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you just do like a melting, it's like eye makeup remover and it takes them off, clean them off. You can either reuse the old ones by soaking them in rubbing alcohol and then cleaning them and putting them back on, or you can do new ones every time. So nice. And I had some really sensitive eyes in law school, especially where I was constantly reading and straining my eyes. But the mascara was more irritating to me than the extensions were. Whereas, now I get extensions and it's a lot lighter. It's a lot easier for me on my eyes when I do Lashify because it's just a little less toxic feeling, right? Like the other ones are great. They last a while, but my lashes just weren't strong enough to withhold constantly adding more on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so great because you just wake up and you feel like you're ready. You can go to the
It's
gym.
great unless you have the ability of a small child. And that's what I look like when I put those Lashify lashes on. They're like all, they're all wonky and well, I can't do it.
Well, the trick is to let
I
the
can't do
bond
it.
set. You got to let the bond set. You can't put them on right away. You got to let the bond
No.
set so they're tacky.
It's
I'll
patient.
Yeah.
come help you. I'll come help you sometime.
Okay, deal.
Yeah. The next time we have a um fundraiser or whatever that we all meet up at, we need to get our
Yes.
Kayla's and get our eyelashes on.
Well, that's
Yes.
what I love about Kenzie. So I always wanted to be like a makeup artist. And I remember I was filling out the ACT, the standardized test before you go to college. I was filling out the ACT form, and I remember saying, lawyer, asked like career-wise what you wanted to do. And I said, lawyer and then makeup artist. And I remember my mom is so encouraging and loving. She never really ever says anything negative, but she said, are you sure? That sounds like a pretty big jump, right? And then I realized, oh, I just want to do it for myself. I don't necessarily want to do it for everybody else, right? But Kenzie is actually a certified like makeup artist, and then she had to get the cosmetology license to operate up here, but so talented. And so that I have zero tattoos. I can't commit to anything that long term, but red lipstick, like you said, Andy, I can
Yeah.
commit to that. That's no
Yeah.
problem. So I went
Yeah.
0 to 100, right? Like I had no tattoos to tattooing my face naturally.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, Josie, do you have anything else? I mean, Mikayla, you literally did our job for us today.
And
We didn't have to we didn't ask one question.
I know, I know.
You
I can talk.
you got it
Okay.
all covered.
I get that from my dad and my dad's side. We could just talk to anybody or to ourselves, clearly, right? But
Well,
yeah,
that
if you
was
have any
great.
any questions? Oh, one thing I want to tell people, if you're looking at estate planning, always do that. I do a ton of guardianships. I've been really blessed to have a very busy guardianship practice for adults and minor children. And I would strongly, strongly encourage you, if you have capacity, if you have, what we call testamentary capacity, to execute a will, a healthcare directive, and a power of attorney. Dr. Manaski's going to get the credit for that. Every person needs three basic estate planning documents. A will or will substitute, also called like a revocable living trust. That's a more unique scenario that we can talk about on a case-to-case basis. But a healthcare directive and power of attorney are absolutely essential for everybody. Of course, I'd love to help you with that. If you can't, or if you're out of North Dakota and you need somebody else, get those three documents if you do nothing else. A lot of people say you don't need a will. You don't need a will because the laws of intestacy apply. If you die without one, and that is true. So the laws of intestacy dictate that if you die without a will, there is a certain way that your assets pass, right? So if you're married and you have children with the person that you're married to, on that first, when you first die, that the surviving spouse, as long as all your kids are with that surviving spouse, everything goes to them, to that spouse. However, if you die with kids from a previous relationship and a surviving spouse that's different, they're not the parents of they're not the parent of those children, then depending on the length of marriage, a certain percentage goes to the children, a certain percentage goes to the surviving spouse. If you die with neither of those, it goes to, well, if you die without a spouse, then it goes all to your children, split equally. And if you have no children, then it goes to, or no spouse, then it goes to your parents, split equally if they're alive. If there's no parent, then it's your siblings, split equally. For most people, that works. But or another big one is if you have stepchildren. If you have stepchildren that you want to leave assets to and they are not written in a will, by law, they are not going to receive. If you have a will, you can absolutely designate that. Okay. That's most important. You also give the court guidance because you're saying, and these are for informational purposes only. I'm not your individual attorney, right? Like seek your own legal counsel. This is for informational purpose only. True lawyer, given the disclaimer.
No kidding.
But to make this information accessible, right? You need to know that if you want to leave assets to a stepchild, or if you have a child from whom you're estranged, you don't feel it's fair to give them anything. If you die without a will, they will get the same share as any other child. Okay. So if you want to disinherit a child, you have to specifically do that through a will. Okay. Or a revocable living trust, depending on what kind of plan you need. The other piece that I think is important is if you have minor children, right, and you want to nominate a guardian. So that's the other misnomer is you can, depending on the case by case basis, you can nominate who you want to serve as your guardian for your guardian and conservators of the estate for the minor children. It's a very important one too. People think, oh, I'm young, I'm not going to die. Well, you have children. Who do you want them to go to? And realistically, family members will step up and they'll hire a lawyer like me to enact that. But that's a heck of a lot more costly, especially if you have competing grandparents, right? It's gonna be a contested hearing, and you're gonna cost yourself tens of thousands of dollars on the low end if it goes contested, versus 1,000, 2,000, depending on what plan you pick, to name that stuff ahead of time. And most importantly, it's what you want. It's what your will is, what your intent is. Um, and then just as importantly, I think, and you give guidance to the court on who you want to serve as your personal representative, who you want to step in your shoes, pay your last debts and taxes, and distribute your will according to your wishes, right? Those are all very powerful, I think, reasons to have a will, to leave a will. Um, while you're of sound mind, right? Because when you get into that testamentary where capacity is an issue, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole if I don't think you're competent. And now we're looking at a guardianship proceeding, right? And then if it's a contested guardianship, even if it's an uncontested guardianship, we could talk thousands of dollars, right? It would be significantly more than if you just take the initiative to make that plan initially. Healthcare directive, durable power of attorney. Full disclosure, you can have your hospital or healthcare provider help you with a healthcare directive. I will caution you on that just to make sure that the formalities are followed, right? Because if the formalities are not followed, it's not properly notarized, or if it's a will signed by two disinterested persons. I like to do self-proving attestation clauses, which help kind of bolster the effectiveness of it and the validity of it, to prevent any potential challenges to that. That's why you hire an attorney, right? Like it's great to think I'm going to call LegalZoom and I'm like, I like to do my lashes on my own, right? Like that's great. I shop at Ross Dress for Less. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. Don't tell anybody. Oh wait, we're all gonna know. They all know anyway. Or Costco, right? Like it is not lost upon on me how much money a lawyer can cost, right? And so that's why anybody who comes into my office, I used to let them pick what they wanted to do. And like, of course, if you have a validly executed healthcare directive and you come to me and I have yeah, of course, we're gonna make accommodations for that. But I really harp on my clients to have a will, healthcare directive, and power of attorney. All three. I used to let them pick. Now, if you're coming into my office, I want you to be walking away from my office, if I can help it, never having to see a lawyer again, or at least for the foreseeable future, right? Absent any major life event. The other thing is think about alternate agents. Okay. So the healthcare directive and the power of attorney are very important while you're alive, but maybe incapacitated and can't make decisions for yourself, right? Who do you trust to make those decisions for you, both your legal and financial and your medical decisions, right? There's also what's called a living will, where we can specify it's part of your healthcare directive. Most people recognize it by what's called a living will. That's so technically for a healthcare directive, you only have to name a healthcare agent or proxy to make your decisions for you should you be incapacitated, right? By law, that makes it valid. And then the formalities, of course, of signing need to be followed. But I encourage my clients strongly to complete what's called the living will portion of it. That's if you're in an incurable, irreversible condition, two physicians certify. What do you want to happen if you're with your body? Like basically, do you want life prolonging treatment used? Like no matter what, you're trying to keep me alive, or do you want it withdrawn? Right? Like a lot of people who come to me have had events where they've dealt with family members who are dying, right? And it's just such a hard place to be. Like, let's make those decisions ahead of time, right? And so most people want to have it withdrawn so that they can go faster and at peace, right? So those are those decisions. And then also for cremation, I've had the privilege of working with members of Eastgate Funeral Home. They've done a beautiful job putting on seminars and speaking to our Western Dakota State Planning Council. And unless you have an agreement or a healthcare directive, you have an agreement amongst your kids or surviving spouse, there needs to be a signature to allow that funeral home to cremate that body. And those can be dealt with if you have family members with equal priority to make that decision, but conflicting views, it can just cause unnecessary stress and drama, right? So make those decisions early now while you have capacity, so your family members don't have to pay me to do a guardianship for you later, right? And then power of attorney, same concept, but legal and financial decisions. Make sure you know who you can trust. They have a fiduciary duty, so they have to act in your best interest, but it's just cleanest and best if you name somebody that you trust and think of alternates, right? It's like I tell my clients, as much as I want to see you at every major life event, we have to pretend as if I'm not going to see you again. So to the best of our ability, let's foreshadow as far as we can. And if not this person, then who? If not this person, then who? Because that keeps, unnecessary court costs out of the equation, if at all possible. So there's my shameless plug on work. Hopefully that helps provide some
Well,
guidance.
shameless plug. If somebody wants help with these things, how do they find you?
Oh, very good. Thank you for asking. So I am located in downtown Bismarck. My work number is 701-630-7938. You can email me at attorney Mikayla Reis at gmail.com. I haven't been too lazy to change that to something fancier than Gmail. Works great though. It always you can find lawyers by looking at their most current contact information by just typing into the search bar Google ND Courts space lawyers. And then you can search by people's last names. So if you need to find me or anybody else, we are required by the state, by the bar association, to make sure our information bar the licensure place to make sure our information's updated. So again, attorney Mikayla Reis at gmail.com. It's attorney like normal, Mikayla Reis like Sam at gmail.com, or 701-630-7938. You can call or text that number. Thank you for asking. And my firm name is just my name, Mikayla Reis Law, PLLC, real original.
I like it.